I'm concerned with getting things right, not getting things quickly. Power punishes, speed kills in athletics.
I'm a minimalist. It's like, well, what does that actually mean? And it's kind of like, well, it means I'm going to get the most effect and the most result out of the least amount that I need to do.
I'm a bad program follower, period. And I joke about it in the book, but it's true. Nobody sends me programs to experiment with because they know I won't follow them. Victim's choice. Now, part of this was because we'd have 5 people sign up online and then 17 people would show up to class.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Strength Connection podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kurkowski, and I'm so grateful for you to join me today. So in this episode, I am joined by the man himself, Brett Jones. He's the Director of Education for StrongFirst, and he's back on the podcast to talk about his highly anticipated release of the new book, Iron Cardio. So Brett's been one of the most influential people in my life. He's been my coach and mentor for years. He's one of the greatest minds in the world of strength and conditioning. And today we got to dive deep into this new book, Iron Cardio. So Brett talked in detail about this program, how it helped him regain his strength and the 40 pounds he lost after cancer treatment, the ins and outs of intuitive training and what that term actually means, as well as the traps people get into when it comes to this training. So Brett, he's one of those coaches you can listen to for hours. I'm always amazed at how much I learn every time we talk, and it's always an honor every time I have him back on the show. So I appreciate you spending some time with me here, and if you enjoy this episode, I hope you could take a moment, give it a review wherever you're listening to it. Please share it with a friend if you can help this spread the message of strength. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much, and now let's get on with the show with Brett. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the show, and Brett, welcome back, sir. It's been a minute.
Thanks, Mike. It has been a minute, but fantastic to be on again, talk to you and your audience, and just appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, always. I always have a blast connecting with you and chatting with you. I think this is our 6th time on this podcast between this and the other one. So it's always a fun conversation. But honestly, I've been super pumped about this one because this is, we're talking about the now conclusion of the book, Iron Cardio. We've talked about it quite a bit before. It's been waiting in the masses, especially with this community, and now it's out. So first off, congratulations. I know this has been a huge work that you've been putting a lot of effort into. And with those things, I know it's like a love-hate relationship at some point of getting it completely done from there. So congratulations, sir. It's really awesome.
Thank you. Somebody gave me a quote, and I can't remember who it's from, but books are never finished. They're just abandoned.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
And that's somewhat true, is that as I reached couple of somewhat funny stories, as I reached towards the end of like the editing process and stuff like that, and just realizing that you're not going to catch everything. I'm not a professional editor. I can't afford to hire a team of editors. Although I will say Guido Passante and Martine Kerr were the main like proofreaders, editors, and Martine did the design and she nailed it. I mean, it's just, it's great.
Yeah.
But I was actually with COVID and I knew I was getting close to finishing the book. And Pavel sends me an email. He's like, hey, let's publish an excerpt this Thursday. This is like Monday. Let's publish an excerpt this Thursday. And I'm like, I can't turn this opportunity down.
Yeah.
Because it's awesome. And Pavel's been I've been working with him for 20 years, and I cannot imagine my career and everything without all the opportunities and things that he's provided. And this was just another example of this really amazing gesture to support the product. And but I was like, oh no. It's go time. Like theoretically, I'm concerned with getting things right, not getting things quickly. And so like I was okay taking my time. And I use, if you remember the old movie, The Money Pit. So if you've ever seen
long time going back. Yeah.
I'm drawn back.
Yeah.
But the contractor in that movie, the answer to how long is this going to take is always 2 weeks.
Right.
And it's like a 5-year process. So my answer to any project is 2 weeks.
Right.
And
it's like the Chinese restaurant in Seinfeld of like, 5-10 minutes. Yep.
Exactly. So yeah, yeah, getting it launched was fantastic, and just really happy that it's out there.
That's so great, and I've got a chance to read the book, see the final copy. It's so great, and we're going to dive into a lot of it here on this podcast. We've talked about it in bits before. There's a few really cool topics I wanted to dive into, specifically on the intuitive training side. You know, it's one of those topics that it sounds so beautiful and romantic, and I think a lot of people like that approach. But in this book, you also talk about some of the traps of intuitive training and kind of that real good, comparison between structured versus intuition and how to really mold those together. But, before we even get into it, like what I saw so much from it, and I feel very fortunate because I got to do a lot of this work with you over this time as you were building this together, which was awesome. But it's such a beautiful example of, it's not just one training protocol. Like there's a program in there, but there's so much depth in it. So it's like a training piece, along with really a philosophy that you can use for strength training, which, as we know, carries over into so many other different aspects. So I was thinking like, well, who would be best to read this book? I'm like, I think anybody that's on a strength journey is really going to benefit from this book from here. So it's just beautifully well written. And again, I can't praise it enough, as we dive into it here.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Very, very kind.
Yeah. So to get started, I know we chatted a bit about this before of how this really got started, but if we can take it back to like what inspired you to write this book? And then when did you think that, oh, this is something that I actually could turn into a book and start releasing out to the community?
Yeah, it's interesting because I had put some versions of what was then known as strength aerobics in an article that I had written a few years back. Maybe I'd have to go back and see which article that was. But because I've got 60 some on the StrongFirst website. And so, but I know it was part of an article a while back. And from the time that the Strength Aerobics original article with Alexei Senart and Pavel was published in 2014, I had kind of used some version of it as on and off in my training. And then, of course, February 2020, diagnosed with cancer. Went through my cancer treatment from March 30th to May 15th, lost over 40 pounds in the course of treatment. I'll have to send you one of the pictures of me at my stepdaughter's high school graduation, which of course was completely different because of the pandemic and things like that. And, I look at that picture, the picture will come up in my memories on my phone every now and then. And I look at it, I'm shocked every time I look at it. I'm like, who is that guy? Like, I don't recognize myself. So when I got started training again, having dropped from 205, had been training for Sinister, doing a lot of sessions with a 48 and 56 kilo and was making good progress, and then get started back with training at 164. And like initially I was like, I'll just do some body weight stuff, just kind of rebuild. And so pull-ups are going to be great because I'm 40 pounds lighter. This will be, no, I was struggling through 2 or 3 reps. Everything was hard. And what I quickly realized is, and this is kind of one of the things I know some people will say, well, kids, for example, shouldn't do anything but body weight. They shouldn't pick up weights. They should just do body weight. Well, sometimes a push-up is way heavier than the 15-pound dumbbells that you can start with.
Right. Yeah. It's a really good point.
Yeah. Sometimes it's better. You're better off starting with weights versus body weight stuff. And that's kind of the realization that I came to. So step 2, get back to swings and get-ups, obviously. Well, I wasn't strong enough for the ballistics. The stress of being powerful, and this is something that I've kind of joked about for a long time. You're the old saying is, power punishes, speed kills in athletics. Well, your power will punish you and your speed can kill you if you're not ready for it.
Right.
And that's kind of the realization that I came to, is that I wasn't even strong enough to get back into ballistics with a 24 kilo bell. And so step 3 was, well, let's get back to the strength aerobics, which came to be known iron cardio, a single clean, a single press, a single squat, and let's just start there. And I remember going through, and I've looked back, and the first session was 20 sets. And I don't know that I tracked total time. I'll have to go back and check that. but I
did you do it more on like a timeless based strategy?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That actually, when Pavel was putting together the second edition of Simple and Sinister, and he had shared this kind of timeless strategy with me, I started implementing it. And I had been very rigid in my training for years of putting myself on the clock and using very regimented timeframes. And so for me, getting on the timeless strategy was like,
right,
you know, free my mind. And Morpheus quote that I also have in the book. And that was my strategy. But I remember struggling through the 20 sets with the 24 kilo.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward X number of months or whatever it was, and I was doing 60 sets with 36 kilo.
Yeah.
And so and I've progressed even more, since that point. Mm-hmm. Although I do think 60 sets is a top end. I don't know, because the volume you can get into, if you just do clean press squat, 3 reps per set times 60 sets, it's 180 reps.
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers get pretty big. So you throw in like a rep ladder, you're at 240 reps if you get to 60 sets.
Right.
So the numbers get big. And
it's such a sneaky volume too, because it's like, it's that 1 rep at a time, and you don't think of it like that. It's like, oh, it's a single bell front squat with a relatively lightweight for a squat. It's like, oh, okay, I can do this. But yeah, multiply by 60 times, like those are still real reps, even though you're doing them 1 at a time.
Yeah. And it just really adds up. And I've found, kind of side note, I was doing some stuff with the NSCA, and one of the things that we were filming, I'm looking forward to the force plate data. We were on the Vald force decks, and I haven't gotten the data yet because that's math and I don't do math. So somebody else is doing math, and you'll find out how little I do math here in just a second. But one of the other things we did was get on the accelerometer and put the push band on and do some 2-handed swings and look at power. And 2 things on the force deck, Antonio Squillante looked at it and he's like, this is amazing. He's like, your right and left, because the force deck gives you right left comparison, they're overlaid. He said that's incredibly rare. Almost everybody we put on the force decks, you'll see a 5 or greater % difference between right and left being pushing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So like very symmetrical power production.
Wow. Okay.
Within the swing. And my accelerometer numbers, when we did 2-handed swings with a 40 and a 48, were just over 1800 would be the kind of peak. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, Antonio, is that good? and he's like, well, most everybody else is at 800 to 1,000. Like you're pretty much doubling other people's.
So you're the Ivan Drago of kettlebell swings.
Apparently, either that or my model is a little off. Mm-hmm. But so I took that as kind of this almost kind of valid, because I've been doing way more strength iron cardio than I have ballistics. And even though you can sneak ballistics into your iron cardio. And so I took that as like this really great sign that I've really rebuilt my power production and my ability to handle the ballistics over the last couple of years. And so how did we get here where the book is released? So in the process of putting some social media stuff up, and just, how I do social media, it's as
I know what you're doing for the day. Yeah.
Yeah. It's as ineffective as you can get. Right. Because I just film a 15-second video and put a little caption on and post it. But people started watching. And I actually got an email from a woman who trains with a couple other friends, and they started looking at what I was doing on social media and taking notes, working out the variations for themselves. And they've been doing iron cardio for like 6-7 months.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And
getting great results. They love it. And that's amazing feedback. But in the process of starting to put some of that information out there, people were like, are you going to put a book out on this? And I'm like, well, okay.
Sure.
Yeah, why not? I'll just say,
It's so funny that people just throw that out there of like, oh, you should do a book on this. Like, oh, okay, I'll whip it up today. And
exactly. Take a weekend, put that book together.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. The force plate work that you did with Antonio was kind of almost like a validation of all the work where actually your ballistics kind of came back, it seemed, after not even really doing ballistics, by just getting back into just the specific protocol that you were doing.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say I haven't done ballistics.
Yep.
Because certainly I have swing days and I've gotten back to swinging the 48 and I'm actually really enjoying 2-arm swings, the 40 kilo right now. Because one of my realizations, maybe for future works, is just how heavy do we need to go for ballistics? Because what's happened for me in 2-arm swings is instead of you could see greater power production. I did 24, 32, 40, 48. So we had nice little set gaps. I kind of plateaued between the 40 and the 48. And I think if we had gone to the 56, we would have seen a tail off, or actually less power production.
Yep.
They didn't have one, so I don't know, because I would have swung it, but it wasn't an option. So I think the tendency towards going really heavy on the ballistics is maybe not the best direction.
Right.
And I think even for snatches, and certainly I've done snatches as heavy as the 40, but I think the 24 to 32 kilo range might just be optimal for snatches. But anyway, that's a left turn into a completely different topic.
Yeah. Well, that's something we'll definitely dive in that, because I think that's one of the traps even that you put into, like, when you get into programming, like avoiding just adding intensity for the sake of intensity, and it's interesting. When I had Antonio on the podcast last, we were talking about some of this research work that we're doing about readiness and kind of finding that Goldilocks bell of where you get the most force production. And it's so interesting. I think that dives so much into this whole topic of minimalism, and I know you're a minimalist at heart, and it's one of those words too that is it's kind of out there, like, oh yeah, I'm a minimalist. It's like, well, what does that actually mean? And it's kind of like, well, it means I'm going to get the most effect and the most result out of the least amount that I need to do. So it's kind of like, in my head, by swinging the 40K versus the 48, if you're actually producing more work with the 40, then focus on the 40. But it's almost like such a weird mindset, especially with the go for the burn type culture that we have, of like thinking just, more is better on this. But it seems like a lot of the work that you did, is it fair to say almost that, like, you were almost forced into training intuitively because of coming out of treatment and stuff like that, where it's like following a rigid program just was kind of off the table, like you had to do something. Is that fair to say?
It is. And combine that with the fact that I'm a bad program follower, period. And I joke about it in the book, but it's true. Nobody sends me programs to experiment with because they know I won't follow them. I'll send them an email later and tell them what I did with it, but I'm really bad at following programs. Now, having said that, I've followed almost certain programs, like when I was powerlifting and going through certain cycles. Did I can't remember the name, a squat routine that I did because I became squat obsessed when I was powerlifting. And I even modified that because that's how I roll. So yes, it was forced and it fit because that's kind of where I've been for a long time.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, because this term intuitive training, I've spoken about it a lot. I understand it, and I've worked with it for quite a bit over a couple of years, specifically with you and the work that we've done together. But it's still almost, when people say, well, what do you mean by training intuitively? It's still kind of like, it's right on the tip of my tongue. And sometimes they have no idea exactly how to interpret it without going into a 30-minute description, channeling my inner Gray Cook and just explaining it that way from there. But in your mind, when you hear like of intuition or training intuitively, like, how would you define that, or how would you describe that to somebody?
It's a way more difficult answer and conversation. Usually I can come up with something pretty pithy to answer most questions, just hundreds of workshops down the road, you get pretty good at being able to kind of have an on the fly answer. Intuitive training is more complicated than that. I mean, you want to boil it down to its most essential level. It's, I do what I want. Right. So it's training by feel, which can get confused with auto regulation. But it's at its most basic level, it's training by feel. It's training how you want to train in that particular moment. My people have asked me like, well, how do you program this? And I'm like, I literally sit down in front of my training log and I look back at what I've done the last couple of sessions and I go, let's do something different. And I'll think through some combination like today. Today I knew I was short on time. I'm like, I kind of want to do a weight ladder. I don't really have enough time for that. Traveling twos, double bells, done, boom. And like, I literally just get this feeling of, that's what I want to do today. And so I write it down and that's what I do. Yeah. So the answer almost seems insufficient to what it means, but I do what I want, which makes me sound like some, 14-year-old teenager. Maybe I haven't progressed much since then. Right. I don't know. But I think that's the best way, the most broken down way to explain it, but it is insufficient to the answer is insufficient to the answer.
Yeah. Maybe a better question on it is actually to go the reverse and say, what is not intuitive training? Like where where do people get confused with it in there? Because there's a framework behind training intuitive, with it, it's not and I think that's one of the things you describe in the book that I loved. And I talk with Fabio about this is the artist and the scientist, where it's like, and I think the artist and hearing that sounds very romantic. It sounds very beautiful. Ooh, like that's what I want to do. Like I want to go creative and stuff. And that's even where I was in that mode for a while before. It's like, but there's the other side of it as well. There's the science piece behind this as well of keeping in here. So do you think that people get almost like too attached to the intuition and kind of steer away from the science piece?
Sure. It's very alluring to go that direction and be the artiste. Yeah. And there's part of that we should embrace. However, there's guardrails. If there's, anarchy is no rules, right?
Right.
And I don't necessarily have rules, but I do have guidelines. And I do think that through my experimentation and the work that I've done to kind of build this out, I've kind of come up with a few things that, 3 to 5 reps per set, and defining that as if I'm doing a right-handed clean press squat, the highest number of reps I'll do within that set is 5. So if I'm doing a rep ladder, clean press 3, and squat, that's 5 reps.
Gotcha.
I have found that is as much work as you can do in any one set and still honor the rest of what you're supposed to be accomplishing within iron cardio. How did I know? Because I did rep ladders up to 5.
Right.
And then I ended up doing a bad job of strength training and a bad job of doing the iron cardio stuff. So it was like, okay, well, that's too much. So let's pare that back. And and even if you let's look at something that's truly artistic, let's look at dance. And when you look at dance and all of the different styles of dance, if you go Martha Graham, or you go I'm trying to remember the birdcage scene at the moment. Fussy. But you think about that, and so here you have extremely artistic expression of human movement, yet you have guidelines.
Yes.
So that you're doing Martha Graham or fussy.
Right.
That's, I think, the best explanation of the artistic end of things is, yes, we can be creative within these guidelines so that we know we're still honoring the thing that we want to be doing.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a beautiful analogy. I kind of used the analogy. I thought kind of like if you're a basketball player and you're on a basketball court, it's like, well, here's your out of bounds lines that you have. You can't dribble outside of these lines, but inside the lines, do whatever you need to within the rules in order to get to the basket and score,
I
but
like that.
it's kind of like if you're just learning the game, yeah, learn how to dribble, learn how to shoot, learn the different hands. Then you become LeBron James and you can kind of do whatever you want. It's like whatever you need to do because you've built those guidelines in there. And I think that's where that was kind of the thought that I had with the intuitive side, the creative side of being open. Like, yeah, like just openness just means there's no rules. You're not playing the game anymore. Like
Right.
once you have the rules, now you're actually playing the game. And that's where I thought this protocol was so good for people who, specifically people I thought who didn't have the, like maybe a rigid structure of like, oh, I can train like this every day, very kind of scattered type work. Like they might only have 10 minutes at a time or, 15 minutes at a time. You can still do something in there. And it seems like this was like really the best approach that you can go into with that.
100%. I think it's extremely adaptable. And I, for good or for bad, I kind of have this mindset of I can make anything work. Like, what do you need? Like we can put that together. Is it optimal? I don't know, but we can create something that will work within a given situation or answer that question. And I think the different tracks there for the extremely structured person. And I actually had this from a friend who I had showed an early version of the manuscript to, and he's like, well, how do I know I'm not going to screw up? I'm like, how are you going to screw up? You're training. Like, yeah. just go train.
Right.
Like it's work over time. Like if you're worried about optimizing every workout, and I'm not an Olympic athlete. And if I was training an Olympic athlete or somebody that had one of those elite level performance goals, yeah, iron cardio might not be the best thing to intuitive training, and iron cardio might not be the best thing. But that's not me. I don't have a goal.
Right.
Like I just want to train. And I think in training, and I know it's popular and I've seen the memes and, people have said, you have to have a goal. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
If you actually enjoy training, I train to train. My goal in training is training because I enjoy it. I had a lot of fun in my little 22-minute session. And I think you have to reach that point. Like we're a society where less than 20% of the population has a gym membership. Probably 5 or 6% of that population actually goes to the gym and trains. And you can look at the home exercise trends and maybe there's more people than that. But when you're ballpark, at least 75% to 85% of the population of the United States does not exercise.
Right.
And one of the reasons they don't exercise is they don't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. So
yeah,
if you find some joy, and that doesn't mean like it's work, but I enjoy work.
Right.
And I know that's not everybody, but I think you have to hit that point where you enjoy what you're doing.
Right.
And for some people, that's a structured path. They enjoy maybe they're, an executive or a busy mom, busy dad, who's making too many decisions during the day.
Right.
And when you get to the time to train, I don't want to make any more decisions. Just tell me what to do. Or you're the person who needs that expression of creativity because you can't do that in your daily life. You're very structured in your work, right? So there's all kinds of different aspects that can come into play with this.
Yeah. You hit on, there's a few threads that I pull on that I think is so powerful. One is I remember I think it was Fraser Quelch a while ago spoke when he was with TRX. And I think he presented at a Perform Better piece. And that's how we started a conversation, because it's a room of all coaches and stuff like that. We're all excited about being with each other. And he broke down like the percentage of people who had a gym membership, the percentage of people that went twice a week. And it came down to, I think it was like the population of San Francisco at the time in the midst of a culture. He's like, if you think that we're done here, it's like, we need to work with a lot more people, and we need to make it more, it needs to be more fun. He was talking about it, and enjoyable. And I think what you talked about there with goal setting is such a valuable thing. Like, yes, if you are working with an elite athlete, who is, if Usain Bolt's trying to go from 9.8 to 9.7, it's like, yeah, there's probably some very specific things that they need to do in order to get there. But for the vast majority of us who are looking to be healthy in life and build strength up, like, you can gain so much strength and so much health by just going into a training session every day and actually enjoying the process of it. But I think
100%.
Yeah. And I think the other piece there was I was like that for a long time with people who were coming in, and it was like, just tell me what to do. And it's like, that works for a period of time. But if you really think about it, do you really want somebody telling you what to do in something for the rest of your life? It's like bringing that, a little bit of that own idea, like just taking a little bit more of that self-responsibility in order to get into it, and just having those little bit of your own creativity. That's why I'm like, the dice roll of what you put in there of like, here's an easy day, here's a medium day, here's a hard day. And just having that little variety. What I found with people, they get more in tune with it. They get more actually involved in it, because it kind of feels like it's partly their idea.
Ownership is huge. Yeah. Ownership and giving someone ownership. And I think there's trainers that struggle with that because they perceive it to be more about them than the client, the student. And you can hear that in different ways where, oh, that person wasn't serious enough to train with me. Well, maybe you just did a bad job. Maybe they had other things going on in their life that they hadn't told you about, and their ability to take action on the things you wanted them to take action on was limited because they were stressed. They had illness in the family, whatever the case may be. So you do see that from trainers where they'll be like, well, these people aren't serious enough to train with me. Well, that's one perspective. Yeah. To quote Dalton from Roadhouse, opinions vary. So I think I drop Roadhouse whenever possible.
That's so great. On Netflix. Yeah, it's awesome.
And I cannot believe Left Turn. Apparently, there's a rumor out there they're going to do a remake, and this must be stopped.
Wow.
This must be stopped.
Wow.
You do not need to remake this movie. Anyway. So yeah, I think the ownership piece is huge. And even for those people who are initially like, yeah, tell me what to do. If you don't have some ownership and involvement in the process, and it's actually doomed to fail, I think. Mm-hmm. And even when I taught classes out in San Diego, I would all the time do victim's choice. Now, part of this was because we'd have 5 people sign up online, and then 17 people would show up to class. Right. Well, my plan for the 5 is now out the window. Mm-hmm. So literally we'd be doing our warm up, and I'd be like, okay, what do you want to do? I want to do swings. Okay. What do you want to do? I want to do swings. Already been picked. Pick something else. Well, let's press. Cool. And so, go around the room, and, invariably one person in the room is going to pick rest. Right. Let's have a rest period. Cool. So everybody likes that person. Mm-hmm. And then they know that everybody in the room hates squats. So what do they pick? They pick squats.
Oh yeah.
So it ends up being this thing where there's this bouncing back and forth amongst the people in the group. And there's this ownership of what we're going to do for that day. And I think bringing that to your own training and saying, that you're taking possession, or you are responsible for this process and this thing that's going to happen. It has to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, of doing something like that, which I love, it's like, it takes some of the seriousness out of it and actually makes it more enjoyable for the people to get into.
So serious.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, yeah, I really want to pull at the reboot of Roadhouse thread here, but I'll leave that for probably later down the line, which is just, hysterical in there. But shifting here, I had a question for you about the protocol when you got in, because originally when Alexi and Pavel put this out, like the original protocol was clean, press, squat. And then the snatch was something that, was added in, or I believe you experimented with. Yep. And one of those things that you mentioned in the book that I loved, it was trying to remember, it's the like linear progression versus exponential. Is that the right thing?
It is.
Okay. Can you explain that to me a bit? Because I thought that was really interesting, because normally we always think of like progression as linear. It's like, oh, now you just increase here, where you talk about the exponential increase, which is just by adding another rep does so much more than just, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's much more than that.
Yeah. It's a factor of 2.
Yeah.
Like it's a, and we tend to, from a progression standpoint, we do tend to think very linear. I'm going to go from 5 reps to 6 reps to 7 reps to 8 reps. And theoretically, yes. However, at one of those points, the jump from the 4th rep to the 5th rep is not a 1 step. It's an exponential step where, similar to the Richter scale, which the Richter scale is not like a 5 is not 1 greater than a 4. It's 1,000 times more powerful. So, and you will run into things like that in your training, where you take what you perceive to be the next linear step, but the impact to you and your system is exponential. It's way harder. I did 51 sets of double bell, double 32 clean press squat on my birthday, because I turned 51, and I don't do birthday challenges, and
because you have to make it a theme.
Yeah, why not? I'm like, okay, let's you only turned 51 once. Let's do something. And to give you an idea, the last time I did something that was matching up the numbers was when I turned 44, and I did 44 sets of 4 44 kilo swings. So it's been a while since I've done anything related to matching numbers.
I did the 36 get-ups in 30 on the minute when I turned 36. So yeah, I think we've all been there before.
Yeah,
drop a comment of what your stupid birthday workout was like.
It's a thing,
right?
But yet, like the 21 sets that I did today of the traveling twos version of clean press squat, that was exponential. That was not, oh, you added a rep to each set, so it's 4 reps per set versus 3. That was 6 reps per set, 7 reps per set of impact to my system. So it was not a 1-step progression. It was factors of intensity. That's so interesting because I love the analogy you used of the Richter scale on there, because we think it's just like 1 point up from there. It's like, no, it's 1,000 times more. And I know from experience, I'm sure some other people have done the protocol, like the clean press squat day versus the clean press squat snatch day it's not even night and day. It's like morning in January versus like evening in August type stuff. Like it's so much different by just adding that one extra ballistic movement in there. It's crazy. Absolutely. And that also leads into the traps, because that's one of the ways that you end up falling into one of the traps of intuitive training. Yeah. So with the traps, I'm glad that's a beautiful segue right there that we can get into. So there's a great excerpt and article on StrongFirst website right now, if you want to just dive into that before you get into the book. But the 5 in here, I'm like looking, yep, I've been there. Yep, I've been there. The chase the clock one, which I've definitely been on. But I wanted to ask you, did a lot of these traps come up? Are these things that you found in your own training, were things that other people have kind of asked you about, combination of both? Or? So definitely a lot of personal experience in that avoid the trap section. And 2 things about me from a technology standpoint: I am willing to push buttons. Okay. Now that means I can usually figure some stuff out on my own. It also means I screw up from time to time, and I do things that can't be undone, and that's a problem. And from a training standpoint, I am willing to, quote, make mistakes, because I'm just enjoying the process and doing this in intuitive training. So yeah, all of those are like, And the one in there, do the math. Literally, I had not done the math. I did not realize the volume that I was accumulating. And I sat down with Victor Carrillo for a lunch when I got to Costa Rica, and he had been watching my training and stuff like that. And he's like, what'd you do recently? I said, well, I did a rep ladder with a 32 kilo, and, I did 60 sets, laddering to 3. So I went through the ladder, 10 times. And he's like, well, wait a second. He actually does math. And so he's like, that's 120 presses. I'm like, really? I hadn't thought of that. And then you add in the 60 cleans and the 60 squats, and now you're at 240 reps. And I'm like, is that all right? Is that what like? I hadn't thought of that. So literally, like, yes, these mistakes are mistakes that I've made. And the linear versus exponential thing, because one of the traps is always intense. And one of the ways you fall into that as you choose different variations, and maybe you do a 40 set day of clean press squat. So you decide you're going to take it easy and do a 30 set day of clean press squat snatch. That's not an easier day. That is just a different type of intensity. So
that's a hell of a lateral shift right there.
Exactly. So what you end up doing is you end up canceling out where you decreased volume of sets. You chose a more difficult version. And so you just leveled the scale again. And so that's something that you kind of have to play with as you do different variations. And like for me right now, I know that clean press squat, and my main training weight right now is 36 kilo. Clean press squat is a quote easy session. Now I can certainly make it more intense by not resting as much between the sets and things like that. But that's in general, that's an easy session. I've come close to doing the 60 sets in under 30 minutes, which is pretty good density for the work, which is one of the other ways you cancel out. So you might decrease volume, you might pick or you might decrease volume, decrease the intensity, the difficulty of the session, but then you bump your density and you accomplish those sets in a shorter time frame. Well, that's another form of intensity. Like you just so you did a pretty good job on 2 of them, but you forgot the 3rd, and so you end up canceling out. So the workouts, while they all look different, they're all intense. You don't actually have an easy day. And so it takes some time to develop your own language, your own combinations that allow you to actually hit easy, medium, and hard days.
Right. Okay. So when you did the 60 sets, almost doing like in 30 minutes or so, which is kind of like that every 30-second type mark if you're doing it on the clock, but you're doing that. Are you like just setting your watch, kind of putting it to the side, doing your 60 seconds and then check it and then, okay, I'm done. This is what I got.
Yeah. Yeah. I talk about it it's in there. One of my record keeping things is I put the time down every 10 sets.
Right.
So I do my 10, I look at the clock, write down the time. I do 10 more, look at the clock, write it down.
Yeah. Can we talk about that? Because that was an interesting thing that you put in there of like, you had 2 different days that you talked about where one was less time. I think you did in maybe like 30 minutes. The other one was like 35 minutes or so. And so naturally we think, oh, the 35-minute day of the same thing is an off day, or I wasn't feeling as good, but you actually broke it down of the differences in the 10 set breakdowns from there and actually showed that was actually a better day versus the other one.
And my recovery was very different after those sessions. So what it showed was in the first session, I think I knocked off my first 10 sets in like just over 3 minutes. So I was cooking.
Yep.
Well, the next 10 took me 5 or 6 minutes. And then the next 10 took me like 7. And then I kind of leveled out and hit a consistent pace. The other day, I think I did my first 10 sets in about 5 minutes. And then I very quickly leveled out into right around 5 to 6 minute intervals for each 10. So time was more, but after the session where I came out of the gate too hot, I took 2 days off, 2 or 3 days off of training. I had kind of fried myself within that session. The other session where I very quickly hit the consistent pace of 5 or 6 minutes per 10, I was ready to train the next day. They were the same session, but one of them I recovered from and was ready to train again. The other one I needed 2 to 3 days off in order to recover. Yeah. So there's just an example of chasing the clock, and then how, a little bit of difference in record keeping allowed me to go back and say, oh yeah, this is why. So yeah.
It's such an interesting thing, because it's such a natural thing that we do. Like I always use the analogy, like when the GPS tells me how long it's supposed to take, like my competitive ass starts thinking, I'm going to beat that time right there. Like, so it's the same thing. It's so easy to think like, oh, am I on the same time, versus the last one? Like I did it in 28 minutes last time. Well, if I do it in 29, then I'm a failure at life. And I don't know what the heck I'm doing, from now. But when you go, like when you train intuitively on that, like in a work constrained capacity, do you have a mechanism of when I'm ready to do my next set? Are you doing a cardio like talk test? Is it more of like when your muscles recovery, so your speed's going to be okay in the press? Like what's your mechanisms that you use?
So it's first is breathing, so that I know I can reset and that's different than the talk test, because what I need to be able to do within the iron cardio sequences, I need to nail the breath sequence that occurs. And so my breath sequence for something like clean press squat is I actually inhale during the clean, so that I'm set for the press. I have the exhale finishing the press. I have the inhale as I'm doing my active negative, and then I squat and have my exhale either grunt at the bottom or exhale through the 2/3 or top third of the movement. And then little sniff of inhale to set the bell down, the dump of the clean and setting the bell down. So if I do not feel confident in being able to nail that breath sequence, I know I'm not ready for the next set.
Okay.
Now, how do I know? I screwed up a few times.
Right. You give it a shot, right?
Yeah, you give it a shot.
Yeah.
And you learn. And so like even like today's session is a good example of that, because with double bells, the breath sequence is either correct or you're under, heavy load, and it's not having your breath sequence dialed in is not a great idea. So that's step one for me, is I know that I can reset my breath for the next set. Now I have a student that is using a heart rate monitor, and they're very successfully kind of monitoring their rest, their recovery between sets, and they're using that as a guide. I've never experimented with that because I don't even have a heart rate strap.
Right.
So I need to get one and start experimenting with that. And just, I don't know what I'm doing from a cardiovascular standpoint, tracking heart rate. The other, and then step two in that is I feel confident in nailing the press. And because I do train heavier within the iron cardio, like I said, main training weight now is 36. I do weight ladders that incorporate the 40. If I do not feel confident of that 40 kilo going up, I rest. I wait till I am confident in that going up. And so those are the two primary things that guide me on when to start the next set.
Gotcha. Okay. So with the other thing you said was about like after that one session, you where it was like you pushed it, you needed a couple of days of rest and recover after you shot out of the gate super fast. The other one that you did, you felt like you could train like the next day afterwards. What's your biomarker that you use like intuitively in rest? Is it how you wake up, how you feel the next day, or is it mental clarity? Like, do you have certain things that give you an idea of like, okay, this is a good training day for me?
It's really by feel. So wake up the next morning and so I did a silly workout the other day where I did the 60 sets of the rep ladder with a 36 kilo for the first time. And I was not training on Friday. Like I did that Thursday, and I woke up Friday. I was like, oh yeah, we're not doing anything other than maybe go for a walk today.
Yep.
And so it's very much by feel. And I do, because of some of the volumes that I'm getting into, I do try to offset. So my next session was Saturday, and I did 2 arm swings. Mm-hmm. I didn't do another iron cardio. I knew I needed another. I needed pump the blood through my system, but I did not need that to be another day of pressing bells. So, and then actually the next iron cardio session I did was a 32 kilo clean press squat snatch. So just very simple, but allowed me to get back into the groove without too much load. And my RP on the 32 now is pretty, very repeatable.
Right. Yeah. One of the other traps that you talked about, which I think we can all kind of be in, is that always intense, like always think you need to do the harder and the heavier session, from there. Have you found like the lighter days, do you actually almost feel stronger sometimes doing the light days than you do during the heavy days?
Oh yeah. I mean, I want, so kind of as I have trained and certainly been doing a good number of sessions with the 36, but initially it was like a weight that I would visit, and then I would train with the 32, and then I'd visit the 36. And now I can stay at the 36 and visit the 32 for easy days, because my RPE, the 32 at this point feels more like a 24 or a 28 most days. The 36 feels more like 34 to 32 kilo. Like it's, and that I give it those numbers because that's RPE can be difficult to translate, right? Because I think it's, well, how hard was that on a scale of 10? I don't know. I'm fine. It's a 7. Like I don't know. But like, I know when I pick up the 32, and one of the things I'll do during my warm up is like, I'll do, especially if I'm going to do the 36 or rep ladder, or I'm sorry, weight ladder, I will do a get up. I'll progress through my get ups building up to the heaviest weight that I'm going to use for whatever that day is. Okay. But if I'm doing 2 arm swings with 40 kilo, I will do a 24, 32, 36, and 40 kilo get up.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. Okay.
So that I've touched that weight and I know what it's feeling like for that day. But I'll throw a press in to the 32 kilo get up. So I'll go up to standing, pull it down, press, finish my get up. If that 32 has that lower RPE on that day, feels like a 24 or 28, and I know
you're ready to roll.
Yeah. And like today when I did that, it felt like a 32. Yeah. So that 36 kilo rep ladder workout is still with me.
Right.
And so I'm in some ways still recovering from that session. So yeah, the idea that you got to get crushed every session. Yeah. That everything needs to be intense. Like nobody that does manual labor would approach a day of manual labor like that.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Now there's some days where the job's got to get done and you're going to push and you're going to be really tired at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah. The next day's probably an easy day though, once you complete that done. Yeah. It is. It's common. The RPE scale is so interesting because I've said like everybody, I think without being a advanced lifter or anything knows what a 1 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10 feels like. It's like, what a 1 out of 10 day is where like everything just went to shit. It's like everything possibly that could go wrong went wrong. And then there's a 10 out of 10 day when you won the lottery and you got married and like everything all lined up. But those 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 days, knowing the differences, that's a challenge for a lot of people. So that's why I thought the iron cardio protocol was so good for understanding those. Like that's really where I think intuition and self-awareness, when you can really realize what a 5 out of 10 versus a 7 out of 10 feels like from there. And some mechanisms like that of like, all right, doing a get up with what you feel like, how does it feel in the press? And I think what you said, Brett, on that is like, just played around with some shit and figured it out and just go from there. Yeah. Cause if you messed up on it, then okay, you got another day tomorrow to figure it out again and build up. And that's what I loved about at the end of the book, which I thought was such a great thing that you did, is you put in really your training log of the last couple years of doing this. So you can see, yeah, this is actually what I did from here. And you can see it. There's a lot of different variations, a lot of different playing around. There's a bunch of different spots where it's like, yep, I did this consistently over and over again to see how it feels. So really seeing the practice what you preach approach into it.
Absolutely. I have to admit that that's a student of mine that has done some sessions with me over the years, who, unbeknownst to me, was putting all of my workouts into a Word sheet or an Excel sheet. And he's like, "Do you want this?" I'm like, "Hell yes."
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I probably need to send him a copy of the book. I'm trying to think if I did or not. But it's that was one of the things that I was most hesitant about putting in the book. But it's actually one of the things I've gotten the most feedback on.
Yeah,
like that people have really enjoyed, and it is learn by doing.
Yeah,
that you're just watching this thing kind of unfold as I experiment with it.
Well, I think what I saw from it is there's so much great information out there and different stuff, but it can all be very ethereal. Like, and be like, oh, this is an idea of what we're doing. Like, this is a great idea. Give it a shot. But if it's an idea and you can't really see the benefits from it, maybe they did it, that's one thing. But then actually seeing, like, yeah, this is me putting the miles in and the reps in over the last couple of years. And also, I thought you did that yourself. I was going to give you great organizational props on it. So I'll give it out to your student on that one in there. But yeah, no, it took it from like, okay, here's a good idea and a good theory into, yeah, no, this actually works really well.
Well, and the funny thing, when I shot the video, because there is a video as well, which just covers like technique for the 4 basic skills, clean, press, squat, and snatch, and then gives some basic programming examples and an actual kind of follow along, if you want to, 20-minute workout. When I did that, and something as simple as the warm up, like, and I remember Mike Perry's a really good friend of mine, and we were chatting, and he's like, "Well, what are you going to do for the warm up?" I said, "I'm going to do my warm up. Like, I'm not going to just make up a warm up for this video because it's what I think would be cool on the video. This is actually how I warm up to train." And that's why in the end, doing the video and actually getting the book done was easier for me because it's what I'm doing. I'm not just, to your point. And I've read training manuals where somebody obviously had never performed that workout.
Yeah.
Because one example was like a lunge workout that ended up being like 350 or 400 lunges performed, and it would have taken you like 3 or 4 hours.
Okay.
It's like, I did that this morning before I woke up. So, it's all, to use the buzzword, authentic.
Yeah. Yeah. So this has been awesome. So one more question for you, Brett, on this. So I want to be respectful of your time, but when we get into like the structure versus intuition, if someone was just getting started in this program, is it better for them to kind of follow more of like a structure, like just do this, just kind of get your feet wet of getting the reps in? Or do you think they can go right into playing around with the intuition and going into, what's your thought on that?
I think most people would be best served by setting the clock for like 20 minutes and ignoring it and just seeing how many sets you get in the 20 minutes. Stick with the basic variations. And that kind of what I do in the video. Clean press squat, snatch, maybe throw in double bells, maybe throw in traveling twos. Mm-hmm. So even with just that, you still have like 12 or 15 different variations that you can put together. And just kind of run that for a little while. See how many sets you're getting in 20 minutes. If you're getting 40 sets, and just for everybody's clarity at home, right hand is a set, left hand is a set. That's 2 sets, not 1 set.
Yes.
So if you're getting 40 sets in that 20 minutes, and you're kind of doubling the the time in sets, then you need to extend the time frame or pick a more challenging variation and kind of use that as an initial metric to just get started. And then you can push the time frame to 30, 40. I did one the other day is 57 minutes because it was dumb and I should have stopped. But I was like, I'm going to hit 60 sets. And if it takes me an hour, it takes me an hour. And so I'm willing to make mistakes, quote, mistakes.
Yes.
And I think that's maybe the thing to kind of pull together in there is that as you start to experiment with this, and whether you choose to set a goal of 30 sets or you choose 20 minutes, we're using time, we're just using it in different ways, right? In time constrained, we're saying, do this period of time, track your total number of sets. Well, tracking total number of sets and seeing how long it takes you is just a different version of how you use time. So whichever and experiment with those as well. So once you get your feet wet with doing the 20-minute sessions and just seeing how many sets you get in, pick a number of sets and see how long it takes you to accomplish them.
Right.
And you'll start to get a feel for which one appeals to you more. For me, it's work constrained. I enjoy setting the target and getting to that target and seeing how long it takes me. Other students and people that I have doing this, they love the time constraint. They love setting the clock for 25 minutes, do their sets and get on with the rest of their day.
Yep.
Cool. And I think with those initial starting points, you'll really start to develop your feel for what's happening within the protocol and what direction you want to take it.
Yeah, I love that. And if you get it wrong, you're still a good person and try it again the next day.
And just to say a couple of things about that is the worst thing that should happen from getting it wrong is you need to take a rest day.
Yeah.
It should not be a sore knee, a sore shoulder, a sore back. Like that's not the kind of mistakes we're talking about. Because I think too many people also accept the fact, well, I'm training, I'm going to get dinged. No. Training should be positive. Yeah. And do I push a little too hard sometimes and get sore and end up taking a day or two of rest? Yes. And there's times where I purposely overreach, and I kind of have a couple notes written down for potential future article. Sometimes you allow adaptation. So you just punch the clock, you do the work, right? There's times where you force adaptation. When I was in the process of really kind of going from the 32 to the 36 as a main training weight, I was forcing adaptation.
Right.
I knew I was pushing, and I knew I was pushing because I had a vacation coming up.
Yeah.
And so, and I tend to do very little when I go on vacation.
Yeah.
Training wise. And so, again, the type of mistakes I'm talking about are a little too much intensity, a little too fast out of the gate, having to take an extra rest day.
Right.
Not this sidelined me for a week.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. And that's such an interesting, juxtaposition that you said there of sometimes it's, you need to push it a little bit. Like that's you're forcing the adaptation a little bit more. The other time it's punching the clock. And there's times during the year when you can do that, but it's like, if you get in the habit of thinking that that's all you need to do 365, 24/7, then that's when the issues pop up. Exactly. And then you don't step off the cliff, you fall off it, as I think as Riff pointed out.
Yes.
So Brett, this has been awesome again. I really appreciate you coming out. Seriously, I've probably said it a million times with here, and I'll continue to say it. I think this book is so valuable. It's not just from the protocol standpoint, from the information, but just the philosophies behind it, the experience that you put into it, I think is so great. So again, congratulations on getting it out, releasing it. I hope everybody gets a copy of this because it will only benefit people.
Awesome. Mike, thank you so much for not only all of your input over the time frame that you've been doing it, but it just feels good to have it out there and super, super appreciative of the chance to come on and talk about it today.
Absolutely. If people want to dive into it more, maybe grab a copy, check out the videos, what's the best place that we can direct the listeners?
So if you go to the StrongFirst site and you look at the article, and click the link for Iron Cardio. It says excerpt from Iron Cardio. Click Iron Cardio. It'll take you to the sales page.
Cool.
Strongandfit.com has both the video and the book. And they run some pretty aggressive specials and discounts on an ongoing basis. So if you go there and it's full price, just wait a couple days.
Yeah.
There'll be a sale where you can get it for 50 or 60% off. And on my own website, appliedstrength.com, I'll have a sales page up there for people to grab the book. And then if you're a Instagram person and you go to Brett Jones SFG, click my bio, my link tree has the product link there as well.
Perfect. Awesome. Brett, another successful one. I think this is great. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I'm sure we'll be talking again very soon here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Mike, and thanks to your audience for listening.
Absolutely. Bye, guys. See you in the next one. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.